Have you ever stopped to think why some people seem to have a sharp inner compass, almost immune to manipulation and group pressures, while the vast majority simply follow the flow, accepting ideas and paths without much questioning? What exactly makes certain individuals develop such a strong, shielded mind that almost nothing seems to shake them? And what if I told you that what they don't want you to know is that there exists a method, perhaps ancient, certainly powerful and largely unknown to the masses, that can literally shield your mind against any kind of unwanted external influence? A method that directly challenges everything you've been taught about how to think, act, and make decisions. Arthur Schopenhauer, one of history's most incisive and perhaps controversial philosophers, understood an essential principle that few today dare to openly discuss. Human thought, most of the time, is subtly shaped by invisible forces operating behind the scenes of our consciousness. Ideologies we absorb without noticing, beliefs we inherit from our culture, and even the absolute truths you consider solid and immutable might actually be carefully architected constructs designed to control your perception of reality and, consequently, your actions. But there is a way out of this cave of shadows. There is a system of thought, a way of operating the mind, capable of freeing you from these invisible chains. A method that great strategists, innovative leaders, and disruptive thinkers throughout history have used to develop an almost impenetrable worldview, a mental clarity that gave them an enormous advantage. In this video, you will discover not only what this method is, but how it can radically transform your way of thinking, strengthen your mental resilience against manipulation, and prevent external forces from continuing to dictate your choices and your destiny. But let me warn you up front. What will be said here might be uncomfortable. It might shake some of your certainties. That's because once you learn to see things as they truly are, behind the curtains, there's no going back to comfortable prior ignorance. If you are ready for this level of knowledge, for this possibility of mental liberation, keep watching. But if you prefer the comfort of the collective illusion, the safety of standardized thought, perhaps it's best to stop here. The choice, as always, is yours. Let's start where it all begins for most of us: formal education. From a very young age, we are subtly conditioned to follow rules, often without understanding or questioning their logic. School, which ideally should be a vibrant space for developing individual potential, and critical thinking, often transforms in practice into an environment of programmed obedience, almost like an assembly line. Children are taught to memorize dates, recite formulas, repeat concepts, but they are rarely genuinely encouraged to challenge established ideas, explore unconventional solutions, or creatively connect knowledge. The system, often without us realizing it, molds individuals to fit perfectly into a predictable social and economic machine, where critical and original thought is replaced by efficient repetition and silent conformity. And thus, a generation grows up technically competent at following instructions, but lacking mastery in the fundamental art of thinking for themselves, questioning and innovating. The most curious part is that this educational model, focused on standardization and obedience, did not arise by chance. It's not an accidental flaw. If we look at the origins of mass education, especially from the Industrial Revolution onwards, we see that it was deliberately structured to form efficient workers for factories, not necessarily independent thinkers or disruptive innovators. The school bell mimicking the factory whistle, the lines, the rigid schedules, the standardized tests reinforcing the dangerous idea that for every problem there is only one correct answer, all contribute to an environment where the fear of error paralyzes creativity. The mind that seeks success with personality, the one that doesn't easily bend to imposed rules simply because those are the rules, this mind is often suffocated by the fear of judgment, of being labeled a rebel or troublemaker. But there's something that the true geniuses of history discovered, something that can break this cycle of conditioning. The secret lies in understanding that true learning, the kind that leads to genius and innovation, doesn't happen in isolated repetition, but in connection. Those who develop an advanced mindset intuitively realize that every area of knowledge, every piece of information, can and should intertwine with others, creating powerful insights that go far beyond the obvious, the superficial. The major problem is that this way of thinking, this ability to connect the dots, is rarely taught in schools. On the contrary, instead of encouraging free and associative thinking, the system conditions us to accept ready-made truths, packaged in separate disciplines. Those who dare to question, who try to cross the invisible boundaries between subjects, are often seen as misfits, as rebels. But reality, as history repeatedly proves, shows that it is precisely these questioning and connective minds that change the world. The great geniuses of humanity, those names we revere, instinctively understood that the mind should not function like a drawer with watertight isolated compartments, but rather like a vast and intricate web of connections. Leonardo da Vinci is the classic example. He mixed art, anatomy, engineering, botany. His curiosity knew no disciplinary boundaries. Nikola Tesla saw electricity not just as physics, but almost as a living organism, combining rigorous engineering with vivid imagination. Albert Einstein used thought experiments, playing with abstract concepts as if they were game pieces, imagining himself traveling at the speed of light to reach conclusions that would revolutionize our understanding of the universe. They didn't just study their focus areas, they absorbed knowledge from all sides and, crucially, spent time associating ideas from completely different fields. What truly makes someone move from mediocrity to an extraordinary level of thought is not most often an innate gift, but rather this trained ability to connect the unlikely, to see patterns where others only see chaos or separation. This way of thinking, this construction of interconnected information networks in the mind, is what we can call mental webbing. It's the secret behind the ability to generate original insights and innovative solutions. Instead of seeing knowledge as closed, separate boxes, here's math, there's history, over there, biology. The mind that practices mental webbing intertwines them, creating new possibilities from these connections. This approach isn't limited to historical geniuses or scientific fields. It enhances any type of learning and personal development. If someone wants to deeply understand finance, for example, instead of just studying economics, they can connect this knowledge to the psychology of consumer behavior, the history of economic crises, the sociology of social classes. The layers of understanding multiply. If one wishes to become an exceptional communicator, they can associate public speaking techniques with principles of storytelling, studies of body language, concepts of persuasion from social psychology. It all starts by training the brain to stop compartmentalizing and start finding patterns, analogies, and unusual connections between diverse information. And the more one practices this way of thinking, the faster, more agile, and more innovative their thought becomes. Genius, in this sense, doesn't come from a special magical talent, but from the cultivated skill of combining distinct elements in new ways to generate unique and valuable solutions. But if this method of connected thinking, mental webbing, is so powerful and was used intuitively by so many brilliant minds, why isn't it the central pillar of our educational system? Why were we conditioned to think in silos, in separate little boxes? The answer, though uncomfortable, is quite logical from the perspective of those who wish to maintain control. Free, creative, and interconnected thinking has always been, and continues to be, a threat to those who want to maintain structures of power and social control. For centuries, society even valued philosophers, inventors, and visionaries who challenged established knowledge. But over time, especially with the massification of education and the rise of large industrial and governmental structures, the educational system began subtly, or not so subtly, to prune this innate capacity. Students were transformed into mere repeaters of information, evaluated by their ability to memorize and return content in the expected format. Genuine creativity, the search for unconventional solutions, the very art of asking why, came to be seen as rebellion, as a deviation from the norm, a risk to order. But the inconvenient truth, which history shouts to anyone willing to listen, is that all the great social, scientific, and cultural transformations emerged precisely from those who dared to question, those who did not conform to ready-made answers. If we compare past educational models, which often included liberal arts, philosophy, logic, and rhetoric as a foundation, with the current model focused on early specialization and standardized testing, we see a clear shift in focus. But was this change an accident, a natural evolution, or a deliberate strategy? Think about it. The less a person thinks critically and independently, the easier they are to control, to accept ready-made narratives, to consume what is offered without question. Great empires, authoritarian governments, and giant corporations have always known, intuitively or through study, that predictable individuals with standardized thoughts are much more profitable and easier to manipulate than a group of autonomous individuals who think for themselves. Effective learning techniques that stimulated connections between different areas of knowledge were sidelined or marginalized. In their place, a model emerged that rewards short-term memorization and narrow specialization. A mind that masters mental webbing not only learns faster and more deeply, but also begins to see the possibilities, the alternatives, the solutions that the system often tries to hide or discourage. The good news, and this is where our power lies, is that this capacity for advanced thinking, for making connections, can be recovered. The human mind has incredible plasticity. Even after years of conditioning to think linearly and compartmentally, it is entirely possible to rebuild the mindset of a genius, or at least activate much more of our creative and intellectual potential. The key is to stop seeking only the ready-made answers and start asking better questions, questions of connection. Success with personality, the kind that comes from the inside out, is born from this ability to connect what no one else connects, to see solutions where others only see problems or dead ends. How to start this recovery in practice? First, step out of your knowledge bubble. Instead of learning only linearly within your field, start deliberately integrating different fields of knowledge. If you are a business person, study psychology to understand your clients and team. If you are a programmer, explore philosophy to refine your logic and ethics. If you are an athlete, learn about neuroscience to optimize your mental training. This transdisciplinary approach not only expands your knowledge base, but crucially strengthens your ability to make creative associations and solve problems innovatively. Learning needs to stop being something isolated and become an interconnected, dynamic process. Another powerful technique is to actively train your brain to seek multiple solutions for the same problem. Conventional thinking, often reinforced by school, teaches us that there is the correct answer. But real life rarely works that way. For every challenge you face, practice finding 3, 4, 5 different approaches. If you want to improve your productivity, for example, don't stick to a single famous technique. Try time management methods, yes, but also explore changes in your diet, sleep quality, environment organization, mental focus techniques. The more possibilities you generate and test, the more agile, flexible, and adaptable your thinking will become. But of course, this doesn't happen overnight. Just like strengthening a muscle, recovering and expanding advanced thinking requires daily and consistent practice, reading about various subjects, even those that seem unrelated to your goals, actively questioning established ideas, including your own, deliberately exercising creativity, seeking new ways to express ideas or solve problems. These are habits that, cultivated over time, strengthen the neural networks responsible for connected and innovative thinking. To accelerate this process, you can adopt a more structured method, something to guide this reprogramming practically in your daily life. And there is a specific challenge, tested and validated by many seeking this mental expansion, that can catalyze this transformation in just 1 week. Think of your mind as a muscle. The more you train it with varied and challenging exercises, the stronger and more capable it becomes. Just as the body needs different types of training to develop completely, the brain also benefits from being challenged in new and unexpected ways. The 7-day Brain Reprogramming Challenge was created for exactly this purpose: to force your mind off autopilot, to break predictable thought patterns conditioned into you, and to activate neural connections that may have been dormant. If followed with intention and discipline, this method can bring about significant and noticeable changes in how you learn, reason, solve problems, and make decisions. Let's get to the challenge. Day 1. New perspectives. Consume information from sources completely unusual for you. Read an article on quantum physics if you're in humanities. Watch a documentary on abstract art if you're in STEM. Listen to a podcast on Eastern philosophy if you've never explored the topic. The goal is simple. Force your brain to absorb and process new ways of seeing the world. Day 2. Unlikely connection. Take two completely different subjects, which you consumed recently or know well, and dedicate time to actively find a connection, a bridge, an analogy between them. It could be something simple like relating music patterns to mathematics, or something more complex like connecting neuroscience principles with marketing strategies. This practice trains your mind to seek hidden patterns and create innovative associations. Day 3. Multiple solutions. Choose a real problem or challenge you are currently facing, even a small one. Force yourself to find at least 3, ideally more, completely different ways to solve it. Don't settle for the first idea. This teaches your brain not to limit itself to a single correct answer and to explore the diversity of possibilities. Day 4. Challenge a truth. Choose a strong belief you've always held as absolute truth. It could be about politics, religion, money, relationships, or even yourself. Ask yourself honestly, what if I'm wrong? Actively research opposing viewpoints, try to understand their logic, and argue against your own initial opinion. This exercise is powerful for expanding critical thinking and mental flexibility. Day 5. Active learning. Dedicate time to actively learn something completely new that requires effort and concentration. It could be starting a new language, learning the first chords on a musical instrument, trying a new manual skill like cooking a complex recipe or doing a small repair. The act of learning something new strengthens neural connections and keeps your brain in a state of growth. Day 6. Simplify the complex. Take a concept or topic you know well and try to explain it in the simplest way possible, as if teaching a 10-year-old child or someone completely unfamiliar with the subject. Use analogies, everyday examples. This forces your brain to synthesize complex information clearly and efficiently, a sign of true mastery. Day 7. Create without fear. Do something purely creative, without the pressure of a perfect result or external judgment. Write a short story, draw something abstract, compose a simple melody, build something with random parts. The goal here is to unleash creativity. Allow ideas to flow without the filter of self-criticism, unlocking new forms of expression and thought. At the end of these 7 days, if you dedicate yourself to each exercise, you will have given a significant boost to training your mind to think more agilely, more connectedly, more creatively, and, above all, more independently. But the impact of freeing your thinking goes far beyond your personal development. It has the potential to reverberate and change the world around us. And that's where things start to get really interesting. Imagine for a moment a world where people didn't passively swallow everything imposed on them by the news, advertising, political speeches, without a shred of questioning. A world where individuals didn't just blindly follow rules but understood the logic, or lack thereof, behind them, and consciously decided whether or not to obey them. A world where the shielded, critical, and connective mind became the norm, not the rare exception. This scenario, while it might seem utopian to some, would represent a direct existential threat to the power structures that currently control much of society. Governments that rely on simplistic narratives, industries that profit from thoughtless consumption, large corporations that benefit from conformist labor, all thrive on the predictability and passivity of the population. A population that thinks independently, that connects the dots, that questions the motivations behind messages, is much harder to manipulate, control, and exploit. If all of us started actively using mental webbing, connecting information, questioning sources, seeking multiple perspectives, the impact would be gigantic. Entire sectors of the economy based on fabricated needs could collapse, simply because people would no longer accept advertising truths or fleeting trends. Unbridled consumption would drastically decrease as we understood the psychology behind marketing and planned obsolescence. Politics as we know it would change radically, as informed and critical voters would no longer be easily persuaded by empty promises or polarizing emotional speeches. Even education itself would be forced to reinvent itself fundamentally, as the traditional system, with its outdated model of memorization and conformity, would no longer be able to contain or satisfy the minds of new generations, awakened to the power of free thought. The major obstacle, of course, is that this change requires individual courage. Thinking truly independently is uncomfortable. It often means letting go of comfortable beliefs taught to us since childhood, beliefs that gave us a sense of security and belonging. Questioning established reality can be frightening, as it forces us to realize that many of the absolute truths we follow and defend may be nothing more than social conventions, constructs created to maintain a certain order, not always fair or beneficial to everyone. But the liberating truth is that once the mind truly awakens to this possibility, once it experiences the power of connected and critical thinking, there's no voluntarily going back to the cave. The personal development of those who adopt this path of mental liberation is practically inevitable, and authentic success, the kind built with personality and purpose, becomes an almost natural consequence. So the big question remains: are you truly ready to question what you've been taught? To perhaps step out of the matrix of conditioned thought and start thinking for yourself, connecting the dots in your own unique way? If you've made it this far in the video, it means something inside you has already taken the first step, is already seeking this freedom. Now the choice to continue this journey, to apply these ideas, rests entirely in your hands. Congratulations, mental warrior. You are part of that rare 1% who seek knowledge until the end. For you who have reached this point, I've prepared something special, a resource I believe can help you delve even deeper into this journey of shielding your mind. If you want to find out what it is, click the link I've pinned in the first comment. And if you're still here seeking more, take a look at one of these other videos appearing on your screen now. I'll see you in one of them. Keep thinking, keep growing. See you later.